Hello, everyone. Once again, it's Mr. Cablan here, and we are going to wrap things up in this chapter. And what we're going to look at here today is we're going to learn how to graph lines simply by using the equations that we presented to you. So before we begin, just make sure you have your notes, a pencil, as well as a ruler, because we will be doing a lot of drawing. In fact, that's the only thing we'll be doing for today. And what we want to do for this particular lesson, again, is to learn how to draw the graphs, as I said before, using only the equation in the form of y equals mx plus b. So let's get right to it. So what we're going to do in today's lesson is that once we have an equation in the form of y equals mx plus b, we're going to use two things in order for us to draw a line, because what you're going to see here is that we actually only need to have 2 points in order to construct the line here. And basically what we want to do is we're going to graph a line by using two things, which is simply just the y-intercept and the slope, which we can find from the equation of the line here. And what we're going to look at in today's lesson, like I said, we're just going to start off by looking at equations and to determine how we can use the equation to draw the lines. So for the first example here is for each line, identify the slope and the y-intercept. And then what we're going to do with these is we're going to use those two pieces of information in order for us to draw the graph here. So remember, when you have an equation in the form of y equals mx plus b, what you want to see here is the fact that, again, the m here is a slope, and it's the number that's always attached to the x. So the m here is a 2, and our y-intercept is where the line touches the y-axis, which in this case here is going to be -4. So in this case, what we have here is 2 and -4. So step number 1 here, as you can see, these are the instructions that we're going to use to draw all the lines here, is that what we want to draw here are those two things here. Okay, is using the slope and the y-intercept. So step number 1, what we want to do here is to plot the y-intercept. So you notice that what we have here is a y-intercept of -4. So that means this particular line is going to touch the y-axis at -4. So the first point that we're going to plot is a dot on -4. Okay, so that's step number 1. Now for step number 2 here is we need to plot a second point using the slope. So it says here, from the y-intercept, perform rise, and then perform run. And the way we do that is we need to take the slope, which in this case here is 2. Now, what you need to know about whole numbers is that every whole number has an invisible 1 as part of the denominator, which is the bottom number. So the way you express 2 in this case here is 2 over 1. So what this fraction tells us, okay, is the rise and the run. So in this case here, the top number here is the rise, which tells us that from that point, we're going to go up 2, then we're going to go right 1. All right, so from the y-intercept, which we've already plotted, we're now going to plot the second point using those two things there. So from the y-intercept, I'm going to go up 2. I'm going to use this as a guide first, okay, and then right 1. Now, you don't have to draw those lines I've created in the screen there. Let's just use as a guide. So again, from that point, we've gone up 2 and then right 1. Then we plot our second point. Okay, that part you do draw. And last but not least here, we're now going to connect those 2 points with a straight line. Okay, this is where you use your ruler and then connect them through straight the center here. All right, and that's pretty much it. And don't forget to label your line accordingly. And it's going to become important, especially when we look at chapter 5, when we actually have to graph 2 lines on a single Cartesian plane here, okay, or single grid, or one grid. All right, so let's take a look at another one here. So in this case here, what we have here is a slope of -3, okay, and a y-intercept here of 5. So before we draw this here, keep in mind that the best way to draw this is to think about what this line will look like. So since the slope here is negative, okay, we should expect a line that is going down to the right. So the way we do this, again, following instructions, step number 1, we're going to plot the y-intercept. So what we have here is a y-intercept of 5. So from the center here, we're going to go up 5. Okay, so that's step number 1. Right, step number 2, we're now going to use the slope to plot the second point. Now remember, the way we do this is, since we have a whole number here of -3, we need to express that as a fraction. So what we have here is -3 over 1. Now, please note that when you have a negative slope, okay, the negative only applies itself to the numerator, which is the top number. Okay, you don't apply it to the bottom number. Now, what this -3 tells us that from the y-intercept, the first thing we're going to go, what we're going to do here is we're going to go down 3. Okay, so that's what that -3 tells us. So from the y-intercept, we're going to go down 3, and this one tells us to go right 1. So we're going to do that right now. So from the y-intercept, which is that dot that we've plotted in the first step, we're going to go down 3 and then right 1, and then plot the point. Okay, and last but not least, connect the 2 points there with a straight line. Okay, and don't forget to label the line accordingly. That's pretty much it. All right, so now that we've seen how to draw lines with slopes that are whole numbers, let's now take a look at how we can draw lines when the slope is a fraction. And in fact, this is actually a tad bit easier. So we're going to approach the exact same way. Always identify the slope first. So the slope here is 3 over 4, okay, because that's the m value. And the y-intercept here is -1. Now, the good thing about having the fraction as a slope is that then there's not much that that's not much extra we need to do here. We're just going to use those two numbers in order for us to plot the 2 points here. So for step number 1, we're going to plot the y-intercept of -1. So from the center, we're going to go down 1. And then from the y-intercept there, we're now going to plot the second point using the slope. So the top number here, again, is the rise. So from the y-intercept, we're going to go up 3 and then right 4. Okay, so again, notice we're just using the slope as is. So from the y-intercept, we're going to go up 3 and then right 4 and then plot the point. Okay, and again, we're going to just connect those 2 points with a straight line, and don't forget to label. Okay, so remember that when you're looking at the slope, again, since we have a positive slope here, it makes sense that this line is going up to the right. So again, when you have a fraction, okay, don't forget that when you have a fraction, the top number is always the rise, which tells you which direction to go up and down, and the run tells you which direction to go left or right. And for simplicity, anytime you have a negative slope, okay, the run is always going to be positive, okay, which is the bottom number. All right, let's take a look at another one here. So this time what we have here is a slope of -1 over 2, okay, and a y-intercept here of 4. Now keep in mind, before we draw this, remember we have a negative slope here, so we should expect a line that's falling down to the right or going down to the right. So step number 1, we're going to plot the y-intercept of 4. So from the center, we're going to go up 4. Okay, so you always plot the y-intercept first. So from the y-intercept, we're going to perform rise and then run. So remember now, what we have here is a negative slope, and the negative appears itself on the rise. So this rise of -1 tells us that from the y-intercept, we're going to go down 1, okay? And this is 2 here, as you can see, is a positive number. So what this is going to tell us is after we go down 1, we're going to go right 2. And let's do that. So from the y-intercept we've plotted already, we're going to go down 1 and then right 2 and then plot. Okay, and connect the 2 points there with a straight line. Okay, and don't forget to label. All right, so that's pretty much it. Again, when you have a fraction, okay, the rise and the run are already given to you. Just remember that anytime you have a negative slope that's a fraction, the rise always applies itself to the top number, and that's how a line is going downwards. All right, so we've taken a look at how we plot points when we have a fraction that's a whole number. Sorry, a slope that is a whole number, and what happens when we have a slope that is a fraction. So what we're now going to look at here is a special case in terms of how we draw horizontal lines. Now remember that horizontal lines are lines that goes straight across from left to right. Now what you need to know about this is the fact that any equation that is just y equals a number, okay, is just telling you that the whatever the number is the y-intercept here. Okay, so like I said, when you have the 2 equations, notice the 2 equations we have here respectively are y equals 5 and y equals -3. Okay, so notice that there's no x in any of those 2 equations. Now you're going to see all we need to do in these cases, believe it or not, is actually the one just the one step here. So step number 1, you're going to plot the y-intercept. So when we have y equals 5, you're just going to put a dot on the 5. Now, for number 2, since this is a horizontal line, we don't need to do it. okay? Because remember, horizontal lines are just lines that go straight across. So we're just going to jump to step number 3 and just draw a line straight through that point there. Okay, so again, y equals 5 just looks like this. That's it. All right, and last but not least here, we have y equals -3. So the y-intercept here is -3. So again, draw the line across -3. That's it. All right, so we've seen the cases of what happens when we have a slope that is a whole number, now a slope that is a fraction. In this example here, notice there's no slope. Okay, so again, horizontal lines are just lines that go straight across. Plot the y-intercept, draw a line straight across from left to right. All right, so for the grand finale for today, we're going to just look at a word problem here. And what we want to do here is deal with a pizza problem. So it says here, Giovanni's Pizza Parlor charges $8 for pizza plus $2 for each topping. So what we want to do here is just to graph that, okay, using what we just did in the previous examples. Okay, so what we want to do here is to first construct an equation based on this problem. And it tells us here that the cost of pizza is going to be based on $8 for the pizza plus $2 for each topping. So we're going to start off with C equals, and that represents the total cost in dollars. Okay, so next part here is the number of T is the number of toppings, and it tells us here that a pizza itself, just for the pizza, is $8. Okay, and $2 per topping. Just think about this as $2 times the number of toppings, so that's going to be plus 2T. Okay, so that's going to be the equation for this particular pizza problem. So the next thing we want to do here is we're actually going to look at this two ways here. We're going to use a table of values, just like we did in the very first couple of lessons in this chapter. Okay, and the way we do that is we're going to construct a table that looks like this. Okay, notice the number of toppings. Okay, we're going to start off with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And all we're going to do with those toppings is to replace the number of toppings in for the T and figure out the total cost for each number of toppings. So for the first one over here, okay, we're going to find out the cost for 0 toppings. So the way we do that, start off by writing the equation. And we're just going to substitute the 0 in for the T and put brackets around it, like that. Okay, so if you punch that in your calculator, 8 plus 2 and in brackets 0, get your calculator to do the work for you. Okay, your resulting answer should be 8 here. Okay, so that's for that. So for 1 here, we're now going to substitute 1 in for the T. So when the 1 substitutes itself for the T, put brackets around the 1. Okay, so in this case here, when you put 8 plus and then 2 in brackets 1, resulting answer here should be 10. Let's do one more here. Okay, so we're going to look at 2 toppings. Okay, so what we have is 8 plus 2, and we're going to replace the T here with a 2 in brackets. Okay, and that's going to give us 12. Now, based on what we did when we were looking at table of values, and if you're looking at patterns of the numbers, you notice all these numbers here are going up by 2 here. So you could just finish it off just by looking at the pattern in the numbers. So we have 8, 10, and 12. So we should expect the next 2 to be 14 and 16. Okay, and that's now the table of values. So the next thing we want to do there is to graph those, and remember that each of those lines there are what are called ordered pairs. So the way we do that is to graph this. So the number of toppings goes on the bottom, and the vertical axis here, that's going to be the total cost. All right, so the way we plot this is we're going to remember the number of toppings is the lines going from, or the numbers going from left to right, total cost and numbers going up and down. So at 0 toppings, we have a total cost of 8. So we're going to plot a red dot right there. So at if we have 1 topping with a total cost of 10, so we're going to go right 1 and then up to where it says 10. Okay, before I plot the next point, notice that the total cost, the numbers are going up by 2, so just be careful of that. Okay, so for the number of toppings here, we have 2, okay, and then 12. We have 3 and 14, and last but not least, we have 4 and 16. Okay, and then connect those 5 points there with a straight line. That's pretty much it. Okay, so now that we've seen how to construct this using a table of values, you notice that took a little bit of time. We're now going to look at this exact same problem, but this time we're just going to use the equation. So what we want to do here is that we're going to use the equation, but the first thing we need to do here is to change it into the form of y equals mx plus b. Okay, so notice what we have here is c equals 8 plus 2t. Now you're probably wondering, well, how do we know which one here, in this case, here's the y, and which one here is the mx and which one here is the b. Okay, what you have to understand about this again is the best way to do this is just to understand that each of those letters, okay, correspond to the equation in the form of y equals mx plus b. So for example, what we have here, if you take a look at c equals 8 plus 2t here, the best way to do it is just to outline this accordingly. So if you take a look at c, for example, you have to ask yourself the question, well, what does c represent in the form of y equals mx plus b? So if you take a look at the c, okay, notice the c and the y are exactly the same thing here. All right, so that's a nice and easy one to figure out. Now to figure out the next part here, okay, which one here is the mx and which one's the b? Okay, so you can see in this case over here, okay, what we have here, the b is just a number. So that's going to be the 8 over here, okay? And the 2t, this 2 here is the m, the x here is the 2. Okay, so this here, that's going to be our mx term, okay? Now, we want to write it in the form of y equals mx plus b, so we're just going to swap those two terms, the mx and the b respectively. And we have an equation here of c equals 2t plus 8. Okay, so let's take a look at that, how we graph that. So our slope here is 2, and our y-intercept here is 8. Okay, now we have to be a little bit careful about this one, only because if you take a look at the y-axis here, okay, notice the y-axis here, okay, the numbers are here going up by 2, so pay very close attention to how we graph this one. Okay, so step number 1, we plot the y-intercept. So we're going to plot with the y-intercept here of 8. Now, what we want to do here is to take a look at the slope here, which in this case here is the 2. Now, since it's a whole number, don't forget that we have to change that into 2 over 1. So this tells us that from the y-intercept, we're going to go up 2 and then right 1. Now, this is the part I want you to pay very, very close attention to. When you're plotting the second point here, okay, you have to understand that we have to look at the numbers that are on the left side there for the total cost. So we're not going to count 2 spots up. We're just going to understand that each box here, okay, represents 2. So we're actually, from the y-intercept, we're only going to go up 1 box. Now you're probably wondering, well, why are we only going up 1 box in this example? Okay, the reason for that is because, as you can see, each box represents 2. So when we're looking at when we're doing a rise over run, you always have to factor in the numbers that are that make up the graph here. Okay, so even though we've gone up only 1 box, that 1 box represents a rise here of 2. Okay, and the run here is going to be 1, because if you take a look at the number of toppings, notice that those numbers here are going up by 1. Okay, and we have 2 points, and again, draw a straight line straight through 2 points. Okay, and that wraps things up for this lesson. Okay, so continue working on your workbook, or if you have the textbook handy there, you can work on those as well. And I will actually see you in the next chapter.